The optimal squad size for a Premier League team is 25. Chelsea have a squad size of 44. Too many cribbins! Welcome to Sensible Transfers, where we look for weaknesses in certain teams and identify solutions to those problems in the transfer market. We're not trying to predict what they will do, we're trying to work out what the most sensible thing for them to do is. That's what Sensible Transfers is. Except in this video, what we're going to do is not say who Chelsea should buy, we're going to tell you who they should sell so they get a squad that is somewhere normal, because they have far too many players and it's quite difficult to get rid of a lot of them. So let's start at the beginning. What is the problem? Chelsea have too many players. In fact, if you look at all the players on the books, it looks something like this. It's kind of crazy. So what you have are far too many players to do anything with, and they're divided into different colours. John McKenzie did this very well. Very nice, John. Look, so what you've got are players in purple are under 21s, so they don't have to register for the Premier League's homegrown rules. Come to that later in a bit. Ones who are orange are homegrowns. That's very interesting. You need those in your team. You need 8 of them for a squad of 25. Blue ones are just players that they have. And I've got on the left here, I've got some youth players like Anjorin's a youth player, Matson was on loan at Burnley. Decent players, Cassidy could be a really good player going forward. On the right are ones we're just going to get rid of straight away in a second. But as you can see, this is far too many. And it has a real effect. It's not just that they have too many players that can't play them all, it just affects everything in the club. So if you think of a training session you want to put on, you'll do most things in small-sided games. So you might get a little rondo, let's give them a box. So rondo, you might get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus maybe 2, that's fine. You can have a few of them all across the pitch. That's just one example of something you might do, and you've got to try and pass around, right, between these sort of guys. But what you'll do eventually after your small-sided games and all your individual training sessions you'll do is have 11v11s. Now, if you have 25 players, you have an 11 versus an 11, maybe 3 players, maybe there's some are injured. When you have other players who are injured, not enough, you can bring players up from the youth academy and they can come in and take the job of someone who's injured, and that's what you get, and there's no real knock-on effect. But if you have 44 players like they have done, there's no room in the dressing room to get changed for a start, and there's just too many players. You have basically not even one 11v11 game, you can have 2 running simultaneously. How do you possibly manage that as a manager? You can't control it, you can't give notes, you can't improve players, and then players naturally, big superstars and big money, start feeling left out. Morale starts to drop, confidence drains, and then you get a bunch of players who aren't performing at the level they need to, who don't like how they're being treated, so they are unhappy, and you get an unhappy dressing room, and that is bad. Sounds very basic, but that's the very basics of football management, right? Forget the tactics, you got to keep a squad happy with a first team of players who are happy to be there. Chelsea are miles away from that at the moment. So Mauricio Pochettino needs to come in and swing the axe or the scythe or any other killing implement to start culling the squad. Well, there's a few players you can get rid of straight away nice and easily. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, it's not going to work, he's clearly going to go, so he's going to get shipped out somewhere, don't know where. Paparakman, always on loan. Malang Sarr been at Monaco on loan, option to buy, he might go there, but he's not going to get in the team, probably at Chelsea. Don't need another left-sided centre-back, they've got loads already, he can go. Anjorin is a young player who might not break into the first team, he has played a game for Chelsea, but likely he'll go out on loan or move somewhere else like that. N'Golo Kante's on the verge of agreeing a deal in Saudi Arabia, so that's another player that'll probably go. So that brings us down. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players out the door. So we're already lowering the number a little bit. We're down from 44 to 39. So this is all basically part of squad roster management. So the next part is going to be working out what players they can afford to lose, who they can get rid of from this massive mess. And there's a few again I think stick out. So Callum Hudson-Odoi just can never seem to break into this team, can never work out what his position is. He needs to start playing regularly for him to have a real career. He should go, that's kind of an easy one. Christian Pulisic, good player, but again, hasn't really cemented himself in the first team. Could go anywhere else in Europe and play. He could get games somewhere, maybe go back to Germany, something like that. That's what you can get rid of him here. Then we look for other players around here. Ruben Loftus-Cheek, a Chelsea Academy graduate, so don't want to get rid of him too much. That's 2 homegrown players gone already if they go, but links with move to AC Milan, that can be quite useful. He needs to play far more if he wants to be in an England team or something like that. He needs to play more. He's not a right wing back as he's been playing. He's maybe not going to get in the midfield for Chelsea. He could go as well. They could afford to lose him. We don't have to lose him, but he could go. Ethan Ampadu is a decent player. Wales international, he's got about 42 caps. He could go. He's not going to maybe break into this team yet. If he does, it would be a real surprise. Ampadu can go. And then we're looking at other players that could go. So Koulibaly, linked with a move to Saudi Arabia, he can go there. Mendy, he can go, linked with a move to Saudi Arabia. These guys have really stepped in a little bit here. And Ziyech, he looks to be on the verge of moving as well, also to Saudi Arabia. But you start seeing problems here because really heavily weighted over here, not particularly strong on this right winger. So Madueke is really the only kind of right winger if you take Ziyech out. And I would say actually Ziyech would work well in a Pochettino team because he likes having a player who can come inside to these half spaces to attack and create, because you've got someone like Reece James who overlaps. if we're thinking they might play the way that his Spurs team did. But regardless, Ziyech looks to be on the way out. So we're starting to cut this down a little bit to a kind of a more of a realistic looking team. And then there are players like Mason Mount who might go to Man United. They want him, easy to sell because he's amazing. And you've got Kai Havertz. Arsenal want him. He's a brilliant player. He is, I promise. And he could go to Arsenal, something like that, right? So you've got players you can bring in money for. That's really good. And you've also linked with players like Kovacic could go to Man City. You lose Kovacic, he might go over here. Maybe you lose Havertz, he goes over here. And then you lose Mason Mount if Man United were to pay the money for him now. And suddenly you start seeing that the squad looks kind of not well balanced whatsoever. Because what you've got is a bunch of defenders here, no midfielders really, and no forwards. And actually I've left Lukaku in there and he wants to go to Inter Milan, so let's just actually delete him, he's gone. Which means that Chelsea have a lot of problems to deal with and we need to find some players to fix this. That's what we need to do now. So let's start with the right winger, because we can see we've only got Noni Madueke here. Now he was signed last season on a long-term deal, as a high potential youngster. He's very, very good playing on this wing here. He can come inside and do lots of lovely tricks and things like that, but he's very young, high potential rather than maybe delivering right now. And we can see bursts of that last season when he was playing for them. So we need depth here. Now, of course, as we said, James can overlap here. It's going to be very useful. Same as Malo Gusto at right back. And we think Pochettino will play a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3 rather than a 3-4-3. So he has the option, which of course would then mean all your width comes from this player. So if they were to sign a player to play in this position on the right wing, you probably want someone who's more of a kind of a playmaker, a creative player in the guise of what Christian Eriksen did for Pochettino at Spurs, but from the left. So obviously we've got Mudrik's a winger, Sterling's very much a winger or a forward, not a creative playmaker on this side. So if you think about what Eriksen did for Spurs off the left, it was mostly coming inside the pitch to allow an overlapping fullback to then create from there. Which is why I think what's a good idea is to maybe not sell Hakim Ziyech because he's really good at doing exactly those sorts of things, as we can see on the board. Obviously he wants to go, linked with the move to Saudi. He may obviously have gone by the time this video comes out, but regardless, really creative players. That's what we see from Hakim Ziyech. Hasn't really worked out for him at Chelsea. So my pick as a sensible transfer to replace him is Crystal Palace's Michael Olise. And there's a few reasons for this. First of all, he's absolutely magic. He's young and fits the squad profile that they are building, so he'll be there long term if they were to get him for, it'd be a lot of money I would imagine. But he produces lots of great numbers, as you can see from these things here. He does work off the ball, which is important in a Pochettino side, so you can press. What we can assume of Pochettino's teams is that he wants his players to be able to run and press and do the things that he likes. And that of course suits maybe a younger player, one he can mould into his tactical ideal, which is why someone younger might work. An older player makes sense to be back up to Madueke, so he can then progress and make sure he gets to play as many games as he needs to develop. But if you want to bring in someone now who would be able to produce, Olise. And Olise offers you more than just a winger. He's not just a winger who plays here. For Palace, for the last few months, he's been playing mostly as part of a midfield three, getting into attacking positions where he can attack these half spaces and create. So he can come off this right side where he can dribble and go past players, come inside here, and he's got a great range of passing. He loves these long range passes, really underrated at that. But a tricky, clever player who could definitely mould it into what Pochettino wants. He would make a lot of sense to work alongside Madueke. They can compete for the same position, but they're very different sorts of players. So you've got one's more of an outside right, and one is more of a player who can come inside the pitch and attack or create. So Madueke is maybe the one who finishes moves by putting across from this sort of position, whereas Olise is one who'll get into this sort of position and create from there, and that's why that kind of makes sense to me personally. But as you can see, I've moved to this board now with all sorts of things, and the squad is kind of narrowed down a little bit. I've put Kovacic here. They should not sell Kovacic because he's great, but do you know what? Let's get rid of him so we see where the real gaps are. And Mason Mount probably might end up at Man United. We don't know that yet. But enough conjecture. That's all the players sort of gone that we need to know about. This is what the squad might look like. It looks more manageable, but of course the big problem here is in midfield. Now, Enzo Fernandez is a player who can play as a 6 or an 8. We think Pochettino will opt for a 3 midfielder system that will likely be 2 8s or 2 6s and a 10. And that's where you bring in Christopher Nkunku, because the real problem, we'll come to midfield in a minute, the real problem is the forward line. So they need a number 9. This is the big problem they've got. Now, Chelsea last season scored 38 goals in the league from an XG of 50, which is a huge underperformance. So obviously they're creating chances to score, and that's really good, but they need to create even more, and they'll be better at that if they have a real number 9. Now, Lukaku's probably going to go, right? So let's not include him in this conversation, because for whatever reason, it's not worked for him at Chelsea. Now, Armando Broja is a homegrown player. We know that. That's really useful for your registration rules. As we've said, you need to register 8 homegrown players in the squad of 25. He's also under 21 years old, so you don't have to register him either. So, Kind of irrelevant information, but good information. And then what else you've got is Tifo Football, who plays a striker, but he's more maybe of a winger, I think, possibly. Not really cut for me when I've seen him play. He's there as an option. Broja could be here, could go out on loan, but they've got these three players because Jackson's come in, or is about to come in, from Villarreal. Now, Jackson's a really interesting player. He's a Senegal international, he's young, he's definitely a number 9. He can play off the left here as an inside forward and attack these sort of positions. Really tricky feet, really good dribbler with the ball, but he stays composed. So he's fast and really good with his feet at dribbling at players in closed situations, but when he gets into these situations where he's surrounded by defenders, he finds a way to wriggle out of it and get a shot away. That's what he does. His finishing might not always be the best, but he looks like a decent number 9. He also likes to drop back, receive the ball with his back to goal, and he's a big lad. So when the ball comes in, he can shield it, and then he can take a really nice touch. His first touch is usually excellent when you watch him, lays it off, and then he springs, because what he tends to do, if I give you some defenders to line up against him, what you see a lot of Jackson when you watch him is that he doesn't play off the last line. He likes to drop in between where the midfielders and the defenders might be, like this sort of position here. And he'll drop back a little bit and he'll spot that someone has the ball, say Gallagher here, and he'll maybe take a step back, which is a trigger for the ball over the top, and then he sprints in behind, and he's really quick, gets in behind, times his runs really nicely, good touch, composed, can finish. Not the final finished article yet, but a really good player to have as another option for Chelsea. He's different to what Broja does, he's different to what Fofana does, he's different to what they've got currently in the squad, because the only other option they have is Christopher Nkunku, who isn't actually a striker. But what Nkunku is absolutely brilliant. He's an amazing player, and Chelsea are incredibly lucky to have him. He's not an outright 9. He doesn't like to play with his back to goal. He likes to take the ball and run at people. He's very direct. He plays actually in a similar position to what Kai Havertz does. He can play either side of the forwards, in the left or the right of an attacking 3. He can play through the middle as a 9 or drop more like a second striker. So whereas Havertz attacks the space secretly like a secret ghost, he spooks his way in, Nkunku goes at you and makes things happen. He's really good at lots of things. So you can see his FBref stats make him look very, very exciting indeed. He can progress the ball through passing or carries, he can dribble past people, he's got great close control, works hard off the ball, he's an exceptional talent. But the thing is, he's not actually an outright 9. So what you might get is quite similar starting position to Kai Havertz. You'll drop into little spaces and then attack things. But whereas Havertz might miss his chances, his expected goals is 11.6, his actual goals was 7 last season, a huge underperformance as part of Chelsea's underperformance in total. Nkunku scores, he takes his chances and he creates things for others. He is a phenomenal player. And there's more data that shows just exactly what he does. So that's his FBref. This is his Smarter Scout. Again, you can see he is in the upper percentiles of all sort of things you want from a forward. Shot creation, ball progression, receives the ball a lot in the opposition box, high shot volume. He keeps the ball really well. He's really just a great player, especially to have in that final third. It'll make a huge difference for them. And you can see the need in goal contributions from this graph that I stole from The Athletic, a great article that you should read when you read The Athletic. Now, here you go. You can see Chelsea's goal contributions per 90 minutes by season. This is some of their players: Sterling, Ziyech, Felix, Mount, Mudryk, Kai Havertz, all really low. Nkunku really high in that same season. And if you look here, this is expected goal contributions per 90. Here he is again, really high compared to other players. And so that's what we'll get from Nkunku. So part of the sensible transfers, that was a very sensible transfer indeed. He's a great player. Either play as the 10 in this position in a 4-2-3-1 like this, or he can play ahead of someone deeper. So what we can even do is play Nkunku as the 10, play Jackson further forward, or Broja, or Fofana. Get use of your young players, make sure that they get minutes. Chelsea are a developing side, and they've got lots of creativity either side with Madueke and Mudryk or Sterling or something like that. They've got lots of options, and of course you don't want to just play one set way, you want to change the way you can play. But regardless of what they want to do, and say they don't sign Elise because they want to keep Madueke as the main right-sided option, and they want to bring Sterling over here as well, so you've got the options here to keep your squad smaller and trimmer so they can make sure they don't make the same problems for themselves that we talked about at the start of this video. Well, the problem they've got, obviously, as you can see, is that there's no options in midfield if they have got rid of Kovacic, if they have got rid of Mount during the window. So what we know is that Chelsea wanted to sign Manuel Ugarte from Sporting, but he's gone to PSG. And Ugarte is a very defensive midfielder, a ball-winning kind of player, someone who can play alongside Enzo. Now, Enzo is more of a player who drops deep, can be the 6, and then he can spring passes from this sort of area and help link play from build-up. Really good at these sorts of things. Did that for Argentina in the World Cup. He can, of course, play high up the pitch as a number 8, but he's not very mobile. So if you push high up the pitch and you have to recover, Enzo Fernandez is not your man to try and get back and recover. So you sit him deep instead. He can recycle play when it's pinged out to him and help move around. then you want someone busy next to him. Now, you might say that Conor Gallagher could be that player, but he, although he looks like a ball-winning, busy, box-to-box kind of player, is actually better at being more like a 10, and he can play instead of Nkunku at times in this sort of area here. He's quite good at that, did that for Palace really well. So instead what they want to do is sign another midfielder to play in this position. They've got Andre Santos, who's a young Brazilian player. He might be able to come in and play like a box-to-box, kind of more of an attacking player. They've got Chukwuemeka, who they signed from Aston Villa, a really good, talented young player. Again, more of a 10, can play like this, maybe breaking from midfield if that's what they want to do. And so the next thing they want to do is sign a midfielder, and rather than try and introduce a sensible choice for them, we'll just talk about the player that they're really strongly linked with, that they're probably going to buy by the time this video comes out or sometime after. And that player, of course, is Moises Caicedo, the Brighton one. You know him, he's great. Lovely midfielder. As we can see, he likes to win the ball back, very busy, clever player, works really hard between the boxes, but he's a smart, tactically disciplined player who will be able to offer the busy work off the ball while Enzo Fernandez is dropping deeper. So you've got a bit of energy next to Enzo Fernandez to allow him to do the things he's best at, and Caicedo to do everything else, and link play from defence to attack as a midfielder should, especially in a midfield too. Now, if they get Caicedo, that'll work perfectly for what Pochettino wants to do. He wants to have a busy midfielder next to someone who can hold it. That makes absolute sense. And you see the difference in what Caicedo does to someone like, say for example, Mason Mount. Like mostly attacking kind of stuff. Caicedo is mostly kind of midfieldy stuff, that's what you get. So they want to have a player like that, like the Ugarte kind of player that they did missed out on. Caicedo makes absolute sense and is a very sensible transfer. And so, of course, it looked at the start of this video like Chelsea had this horrible problem with too many players, they'll never get rid of them, but a few things have come up that have worked. They're managing to ship out a few already. Money from Saudi Arabia has really helped with that, so that's a welcome addition for them. And then what you've got is a squad that has been trimmed down. It won't necessarily look like this. You might have Kovacic and Mount in there. There's lots of things that could happen going forward, but this is a much tighter, easier to manage squad with lots of potential. And if you bring in players like Caicedo, it'll make it a lot better, a lot stronger, and there's a real core to work with for Pochettino. And considering where they were at the start of this video to where they are now, I think it's all right. Lots to do, lots of room to progress. And we'll cover all the new signings they make on Tifo IRL, so do please subscribe and come back to us and watch all the videos we do on those players when they sign them. And that is Chelsea.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including journalists dedicated to each Premier League team, so every fan gets the coverage they deserve, not just the big clubs. And you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.